Jazzcast Pros.
Hello, and welcome back to High Vibe Table Talks. This is your host, Rashawn Hargrave. If you have ever asked yourself, why is my brain like this? I'm going to tell you exactly why today. You will see by the title of this episode, the overflow of your strengths are your weaknesses. And you might be like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But I think that hearing this was one of the first entrances into me being soft and graceful and holding space for the way that my brain worked. Welcome to High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the cautiously ambitious woman, remove mental barriers and take action now so that you can achieve your high vibe desires. I'm Rashawn, your high vibe curator, cheerleader, and accountability partner. As a wife, a mother, and an entrepreneur who recently quit my job to follow my dreams, I understand why you may be hesitant to throw caution to the wind and take that leap. The growth journey can be a roller coaster ride, filled with highs and lows, expectations and disappointments, fear of the unknown. But here at the High Vibe Table, we take big dreams and break them into small action steps that can transform your life. The overflow of your strengths are your weaknesses. I first heard this saying from a YouTube channel a couple years ago, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks because I tended to be so hard on, why can't I do this? Why does everyone else seem to have their shit together and my brain works this way? In a recent podcast episode, I talked about when you are struggling or very much in overwhelmed to sit with and think through the things that are going well. What are the things that are going well? What are the things that are working for me right now? Versus what we tend to do is spin out on the things that are going poorly. We tend to focus on the negative. We definitely have a culture of scarcity mindset. There are so many things that are out there that we focus on the negative or the what ifs, what would happen if I got hit by a car? What would happen if my roof caved in? What happens if I get into an accident? All of these things are focused on what if something bad happens? Instead, can we focus on the positives? And that is part of what this quote has helped me do. And so instead of focusing on my weaknesses, celebrating how my brain works in a positive way and saying, okay, because I am like this, here is where some of the downfalls are going to be. So what I want to do today is explain that more in the frame of here are some things that I struggle with, and here is how I reframe them to say, okay, this is a result of one of my strengths. So isn't it amazing that my brain works this way? As well as the third piece is how do I create support rituals, routines, systems that then support my weaknesses so that they don't kind of drag me down as much. So I'm going to talk through my weaknesses. The first example is I struggle with the follow through. So I get shiny object syndrome. I tend to get very distracted and I'm like, oh, this would be so cool. I love a good whiteboard session. I love coming up with ideas, ideating, being like, oh, wouldn't this be so cool? And then I leave the meeting and I'm like, oh my God, now I have a list of 100 things to do. And maybe I'll do 5 of them. And then the email comes back and I'm like, oh, I need to do that. Oh, yeah. And I'm so dragged down by that. But I have so many half-finished projects around the house. A couple weeks ago, I got really excited about this new sales course that I am putting together. And I was really excited about the idea, started to put feelers out there, called on my community to be like, hey, can you help me brainstorm and figure out what exactly this looks like? And I put a couple things in place and then I didn't touch it for weeks. Even in my podcast production spreadsheet where I have a spot where I put some new ideas and I'll be like, oh yeah, I really want to talk about this topic. And I put it in there and then I go back to look at it a couple weeks later and I'm like, what was I even going to talk about with this? And so it feels like, God, why can't I just take things to completion. Why can't I just do X, Y, and Z that I know I need to do, that I feel like I should be doing, and I just can't get there? So that is an overflow of a beautiful part of my brain that is this well of creativity that will never run dry. I will always have new ideas, new topics to talk about, new inspiration that comes to me. The overflow of that means that I can struggle with the follow through. And that's okay, because the reframe is, aren't I so glad that my brain works like that? Like, I'm so glad that I am ever flowing with ideas. Like, that's really cool. And so, again, it's just a mindset shift. It's just a reframe. So instead of like, God, why can't I do the follow through? It's like, thank you, brain, for always coming up with new things to do. There are a couple supports that I put in place because I know my brain works like this. The first thing is I have an idea bucket. And so it allows me to feel like I have a place where when a new idea comes to me, I can put it somewhere so I won't lose it. And it won't distract me from working on the things that are in front of me right now. You know, one of the things that has come up in my business is the virtual co-working sessions. Those are created so that I do the things I say I'm going to do. I can take that time to say, these are important, so make sure I follow through with these. And it's not necessarily always dependent on my motivation. Those rooms are open every Wednesday, no matter what. And so I have a place where I do the things that I say I need to do. So that's kind of the reframe. That's the support. So I have a couple more examples, but you get the idea that like, the follow through is from the shiny object syndrome, meaning that I am overflowing with new, creative, inspired ideas. They are two sides to the same coin. And so you just have to figure out which side of the coin you're looking at. Weakness number 2. I tend to be late. My time management has gotten better since I met my husband. He is a very prompt and early person. And that's like a support that I needed. And I kind of gleaned some tips and things from him so that I have become less of a late person. But if you knew me up until like 24, I was a late person. I was the one who was like eating my cereal in the car on the way to school. I was just habitually 10 minutes late. I was always missing my bus by like 30 seconds. Like I'd be running out the door as it's like pulling away. I actually still have dreams about that. So the weakness is that I tend to run late. That is an overflow of getting wrapped up in what I'm doing and feeling deeply and connected to whatever is in front of me at the moment. I think part of that is what makes me a good listener. I do try to live in the moment and get absorbed in whatever it is that I am working on right now. I think that that is a beautiful thing, and I wouldn't want to change that about myself. And when I say I don't want to change that about myself, it allows me to like take a breath when I'm getting frustrated with myself of like, why am I always late? Well, okay, because you are focused on what is in front of you and living for the moment. And I think, you know, one of the things that I am currently trying to be really aware of are what I call the small perfect moments. So the other day, my daughter and I were in the garden and we were enjoying like some fresh strawberries, and her and I just sat there and we laughed and ate these strawberries and they were so good. And it was just like this small perfect moment. So I get wrapped up in those. And again, I wouldn't want to change that about myself. But how do I put parameters in place, support systems in place so that I can be more prompt? Because I do want to be respectful of people's time. Like one of the things that I struggled with is being like, okay, so I need to leave the house. If I want to get there at 11, I have to leave the house at 10:30. Well, at 10:30 is when I would be like wrapping up the things because alarm would go off at 10:30, like, you need to leave. And it's like, no, you needed to like be pulling out of the driveway at this moment. So how do I reverse engineer that? Alarm goes off at 10:20 so that then, oh, okay, now I need to be wrapping up, getting my keys, putting my shoes on, making sure I have my water bottle so that I can be in the car at 10:25 so I can be pulling out of the driveway. So just moving that alarm back by 10 minutes totally changed things. So systems are now in place. So, again, just moving those reminders up by like 5 minutes makes such a big impact on when I'm actually like walking out the door doing what I need to do. Even if I say like, okay, it takes me 20 minutes to do my makeup and I have to be walking out the door at 9 o'clock. Well, I shouldn't start at 8:40 because then like there's no transition time built in there. I think that's the biggest thing is building in transition time between activities. I tend to forget that is like a thing, but when I build more of that in, just give some breathing room to my schedule, which has helped me tremendously. I love getting wrapped in what I'm working on. That tends to make me late to things, so I build in more transition time. That is how the overflow of your strengths are your weaknesses and how you can really find support for yourself. Another one of my weaknesses, like when I tell people that I cry at car commercials, they like chuckle, but I'm like, no, I really cry at car commercials. Like, have you seen a Subaru car commercial lately? But no, I cry every week, at least a couple times a week. And if I see other people crying, it's a little bit wild. Sometimes like when I just see other people cry, it makes me emotional. And there are some people who are like, oh my God, crying again, or like, I can't imagine crying that much or whatever. Maybe that's like my brain saying that's what people think. But like, I am an emotional person and I feel things deeply. And that's another thing that I would not want to change about myself. I can't imagine not feeling things deeply. And I just love that we get to live this life where we get to feel, because just as I feel things very deeply in sadness, I feel things very deeply in gratitude and joy and love. And like that deepness for emotion doesn't limit itself to like sadness and grief. It's all of the emotions. And I get to live in a world where I get to feel all of those things, which is amazing. How do I support myself with this? Well, I always carry tissues. Always. And like one thing I've done recently is just like let myself fully process that emotion and stop trying to like turn it off and just really put names, feelings, colors to those emotions so that I can truly feel them to their completion, so then they don't bubble up in other places and times. So just allow myself to just go all the way there with my emotions. One of my weaknesses is I'm not a tidy or organized person. This one is very hard to come up with a strength, but I think that it goes back to having grace for my brain in that it is this ever-flowing stream of creativity and new ideas. And, I will be thinking deeply about something. And so I'm not focused on where did I put my car keys? Because I wasn't like in the moment with where I put my car keys. I wasn't in the moment when I put my phone down. I was somewhere else, and so I just don't want to shut off the part of my brain that is consciously or subconsciously thinking about things. And so I don't want to feel shame or negatively about that part of my brain. Again, this is where I have to create support so that when I need something, I'm not struggling to find it or don't feel shame that like other people's houses seem to just not have clutter and mine does. So one of the things that I do is trying to, So like my car keys have a place right at the front door. So they're always there. Letting go of like the comparison of like what my house looks like compared to other people's houses. Really taking time to like declutter and just not having as much stuff, because I know that like as a person, like it just tends to creep up and just create a lot of overwhelm in my life. If I have less stuff, I have less things to be tidy about. So another weakness is I care deeply about winning. I care deeply about how others see me in winning or losing. And so again, that's another, like, I feel things very deeply. As a person, I am very competitive. And that has, I think, done me a lot of favors throughout the years. It has made me a better entrepreneur because I really like dig in and want to like win and want to like just figure out a way to hear more yeses in sales or like do the thing that needs to get done. But that has affected me of like, if I don't win, I am a failure. And I have in the past connected winning to success and failure to like my worth. And so really understanding that about myself and reframing like failures equals lessons. And like the Man in the Arena quote by Roosevelt is like, it's so powerful because it's like, okay, you failed, but you're doing the thing. You're learning, decoupling my worth with how successful I am. And so really doing that internal work of I am enough, I am worthy, and really believing that is a support that I have in place. Another support is to celebrate all the victories, the big wins, the small victories, and everything in between, because you can focus on the failures, the negatives so easily and forget all the things that you are winning at, that you are doing well. Another weakness is I tend to procrastinate. I saw someone, Casey Davis, on TikTok, and she was talking about like, I do the Easter baskets for my kids like in December because that's when I see something and I get excited about it. And I need to follow that energy and excitement when it hits me, not when I feel like I need to do something, because if I put it off until the week of Easter, then I'm scrambling and it's never good. And so I think it's kind of cool that like I can follow my energy around things. And when I feel inspired and when I feel most excited to do something, I need to follow that energy. The other side of that is, I have to not let it swing so far, the pendulum swing too far, where it's like, oh, if I don't feel like I'm not inspired to do my taxes, so I'm just not going to do them. So there are obviously times when you have to do things that you don't want to do, but creating space for them and finding other ways to inspire myself to do them and thinking about the end goal, those are all supports that you can create so that you can do the things that you don't want to do versus leaving it until the last minute. It's weird to say this, but like I trust people, not blindly is not the right word, but I am a very trusting person. And like if you say this thing to me, I believe you. Where it has been a weakness for sure is in when I was hiring people. In 2 times in my career, I have been in charge of hiring people. And I meet people and I'm just like, oh, I love this about you. I see this for you. And it has led to some bad hires. And so the support for myself is like, I need somebody else to do this. I need somebody else to vet this person. I need someone else to take on the hiring piece of it because it's just not my thing. But I wouldn't want it the other way. Like, I don't want to be the type of person who meets people and is like, how are you lying to me? How are you not telling me the truth? Like, that's just not how I want to operate in this world. And so like I'm okay that I'm like bad at hiring people. I've also had to get better at letting people go because I hire the wrong people. I wouldn't want to be the other way. So I'm okay with it. So those are the weaknesses that I came up with for myself and how I reframe them to say, this is an overflow of this strength that I have that I think is so beautiful about myself. And here's how I support myself to not get so dragged down by this weakness. So I hope this was helpful for you to start to reframe things that are in your life where you're like, oh, why am I like this? The second part of this is my episode with Diane Winger, and she is a psychotherapist turned coach for ADHD-ish entrepreneurs. Really kind of like opened my eyes to my ADHD journey. I actually have a meeting next week with someone who could be providing me an official diagnosis, which is very exciting and scary and all of the feels. But anyways, like so many of my weaknesses are attributes to my ADHD, I believe. What I love about the sentiment is that it gives you so much grace and love for the parts of yourself, your brain that may look a little bit different than how you see others functioning in the world. And it's just like, yes, I cry a lot. Would I want to feel things less deeply? Would I want to numb my emotions? Because then I'd be numbing all of the emotions. And I can honestly answer that no. So like, I'm not going to feel bad about the fact that I cry at car commercials, because I just love that I feel things deeply. And the reframing of those ideas is really, really powerful. And I love it. I hope this was helpful. If you got something out of today's episode, I would love it if you left a review for the podcast. That would be amazing. Or share this with someone. I would love if you shared this episode, actually, because I think it is a really powerful reframe. And I think that it's a release of some shame that we build up about ourselves. And I think that is powerful, revolutionary, impactful work that we all can do. So share this episode with somebody that you think needs to hear it. Next episode is my episode with Amanda Laux, and we talk about law of attraction, manifestation, the universe. Very woo-woo, but it's all about trusting your gut and your instinct and going with that, which I think is really powerful. So I hope to see you again next week. And remember that big dreams and small steps will transform your life.